Okay, it's 9 o'clock here on the US East Coast. I don't know what time it is where you're logging on from, but welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Nils Holm Nelson. I manage a global unit within the World Bank that focuses on disaster and climate risk management and how to build resilience in development action. The catalog that we're launching today has been produced in a process led by a team that I manage that focus on nature-based solutions. I am very pleased to welcome you all. To open the event, we will hear from Koji Uemura, who is the Alternative Director for Japan at the World Bank. Japan has graciously supported this work with funding, so has the PROBLUE. I believe Ming has joined. Ming Sang. Ming Sang is my boss and the director for Urban Subnational Resilience, Disaster Risk Management. So in a second, I will invite Ming to say a few words. Following these opening remarks, we will have time for a presentation of this new catalog, highlighting its practical guidance and decision support framework. And we will have a moderated panel discussion after that, and hopefully should be about 20 minutes of time for Q&A. Please do feel free to hold your questions until then, post them in the chat along the way, and we will hopefully get along to all of them. And now, please join me in welcoming Ming Sang for his opening remarks. Ming, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Niels. Hope you all can hear me well. I'm very glad to join this launch from Delhi in India. Uh, Greetings to everyone. My name is Ming Zhang, as mentioned, and I'm the World Bank Group Global Director for Urban Development, Tourism, and Disaster Management. As you know, coastal areas are among the world's most vulnerable regions. They face the combined pressure of natural hazards, high population density, and concentrated economic activity in low-lying zones. These risks are increasing with climate change, including sea level rise, coastal erosion, and more intense storms, and they place growing pressures on communities, infrastructure, and economies. At the same time, the degradation of coastal ecosystem is negatively impacting the services these systems provide, including hazard mitigation, nature-based tourism, and habitat for fisheries. This is why nature-based solutions, or NBS, are becoming central to how we approach coastal resilience. Nature-based solutions can address coastal risks and build climate resilience, in the same time also delivering additional benefits such as job creation and opportunities for tourism. For example, the World Bank supported a project in Bangladesh that combined coastal embankments with afforestation to protect coastlines from flooding, employing local forestry groups to plant and maintain seedlings. In the Environment Group, the World Bank is supporting mangrove and coral reef restoration in Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines to boost fisheries and ecotourism opportunities. However, the adoption of coastal nature-based solutions remain constrained, especially in the coastal areas. So that's why there's a big gap, and the gap is linked to the relative novelty of these approaches and their complexity in terms of needing interdisciplinary expertise across engineering, coastal management, and environment knowledge. So today, I'm very happy that I'm joining the launch of this catalog of nature-based solutions for coastal resilience, which responds directly to this need for understanding this approach. The catalog offers practical guidance and typologies to help policymakers, planners, and built environment professionals identify and integrate nature-based solutions into coastal risk management and climate resilient investments. It builds off the success of the previous catalog, the Catalogue of Nature-based Solutions for Urban Resilience, which is widely used by World Bank teams and external partners to identify potential nature-based solutions for their project's context. For the World Bank, this is a very practical agenda. Our teams are increasingly integrating nature-based solutions into operations, investments, and policy dialogues with client countries. But to move from pilot to scale, we need to continue strengthening the knowledge base, building capacities, and supporting implementation on the ground. This is exactly why today's discussion is important, bringing together operational experience, technical expertise, and partnerships to help advance this agenda. I would like to thank the donors and partners that supported the development of this catalog, including the government of Japan, GFDRR, and PROBLUE. I hope today's discussion will help inform how we can continue to scale up nature-based solutions as part of climate resilient development pathways. With that, let me pass back to Niels.
Thank you very much, Ming, for the warm welcome. And now we turn to Koji Uemura, Alternative Executive Director for Japan at the World Bank. Over to you.
Good morning and good afternoon, good evening from Washington, D.C. It is a great pleasure to join you today for the launch of the Catalogue of Nature-based Solutions for Coastal Resilience. We are so happy to see this important knowledge product supported by the Japan World Bank program on mainstreaming disaster risk management in partnership with GFDRR. As Min-san mentioned, coastal communities are facing increasing risks from climate change, sea level rise, coastal erosion, and more frequent intense extreme events. These challenges affect lives, livelihoods, and development prospects, particularly for vulnerable communities. Nature-based solutions, or NBS, offer a powerful and practical approach to address these challenges. Evidence has shown that NBS can reduce disaster risks while also delivering multiple economic, social, and environmental co-benefits. Such integrated perspective strongly resonates with Japan's own experience, too. As a nation with extensive coastlines, Japan has accumulated deep expertise in disaster risk management, coastal engineering, and the careful integration of gray and green infrastructure. Through decades of experience, Japan has learned that resilience is strongest when engineering solutions are complemented by nature, local knowledge, and long-term stewardship. One example featured in the catalog is Japan's long-standing use of coastal pine forests. Across many parts of the country, pine shelter belts have played an important role in protecting communities from storm surges and winds, as the dense pine trees can reduce the wave energy and wind speeds before reaching inland areas. Japan's experience also highlights the critical role of people and communities. Following major disasters, including tsunamis, the restoration of coastal forests in Japan has relied on collaboration among local governments, technical experts, civil society organizations, and the community. This inclusive approach has strengthened not only physical protection, but also trust, ownership, and social cohesion after devastating event. These pine forests are also deeply embedded in Japan's culture and heritage, contributing to tourism and local identity. This is one of many examples that reflect two central messages of the catalog. First, NBS are most effective when they deliver multiple benefits and are closely aligned with local social, cultural, and environmental contexts. Second, resilience is not built by infrastructure alone. It is built through partnerships, shared responsibility, and long-term commitment. In closing, we see the Coastal NBS Catalog as a timely and meaningful contribution to a global agenda that is becoming ever more urgent. It features good practice in Japan and other countries, which many countries can adapt to their own context. Through the Japan World Bank DRM program, we are committed not only to providing financial support, but also knowledge, technical expertise, and long-term partnership. No matter how the narrative changes, I believe our support will not be changed as long as the World Bank continues to develop impactful resilience projects, including coastal resilience. We look forward to continued collaboration with the World Bank and partners around the world, such as PROBLUE, to build resilient coastal communities for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Koji Omura, for setting the stage and for highlighting the critical role of NBS within the context of Japan, and of course for Japan's steadfast support for the disaster risk management agenda by now well over a decade with us. We really appreciate it. Look forward to continue the partnership with you as well. We will now turn to our first presentation. I'm pleased to invite Boris van Sansen, Disaster Risk Management Specialist at GFDRR and Task Team Leader of the Global Program on Nature-based Solutions for Climate Resilience. Boris will set the scene and speak about the state of nature-based solutions for coastal resilience financing at the World Bank. Boris, over to you.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks a lot, Niels, for the introduction. So we will have three quick presentations in a row in which we like to give you an overview of the NBS catalog. As Niels mentioned, I will first start with basically setting the scene. So where do we stand and why do we think we need this product? So first, I must say I'm proud to say that this work has come, that we've come to the moment that we can present this work. It has come a long way, and if we've been also, I would like to, before we start presenting, I would like to already express that this work actually builds on a lot of other guidelines and catalogs that are out there, and what we've done is mostly a consolidation exercise of bringing all that knowledge together, and of course with these partners here on the screen. So just maybe when we go back to what are we actually talking about when we talk about nature-based solutions for climate resilience? So it's useful to have a common understanding of that. So basically, when we talk about this, what we see is that under increasing coastal development, under increasing coastal hazards and their impacts, we see that there is more attention for nature-based solutions. That is the protection, management, restoration of ecosystems that can, help us address climate and disaster risk, but at the same time, have a holistic perspective and delivering these other important benefits for people and nature. So in coastal context, NBS use natural processes like wave attenuation, sediment trapping, shoreline stabilization to reduce flood and erosion risks under climate change conditions and sea level rise. But beyond this risk reduction, of course, these solutions can be critical for creating jobs through supporting livelihoods, but also regulating climate by storing and sequestering carbon, improving biodiversity, water quality, and human well-being more broadly. So that's the perspective that we have. So this is not entirely new, of course. So the World Bank is already investing in these type of interventions. Here on the slide, you can see some examples. So for instance, there has been a long history in Bangladesh of planting and restoring mangroves in front of embankments to reduce wave energy, strengthen flood protection. Also, for instance, in Mauritania, you've seen in other countries, there have been restoration of dunes to stabilize the dunes and reduce wind-driven erosion. In Benin, we have seen that the Environment WACA program has financed large-scale mega nourishments, also known as sand engines, as a hybrid solution to combat coastal erosion. And also in several countries, we've seen investments in coral reef management, protecting coastlines from erosion, but also in preserving the other important ecosystem services that coral reefs provide, including tourism and biodiversity supporting services. So what do these investments amount to, right? So we see that since 2012, there has been already over $3 billion in financing committed to these type of coastal specific nature-based solutions for climate resilience. So we are talking about not an insignificant portfolio. Also, it looks like on the graph here, like the investments are going down, but this also has a bit to do with the methodology, how we track the portfolio. So sometimes we find more projects a bit after we actually do the first analysis. So it may be that the number for 2025 will tick up later. But yeah, there has been a substantial investment already. And when we break down the type of solutions that have been invested in, you can see that there is actually in the portfolio quite a strong representation of mangroves, and on the second place also other coastal wetlands in terms of these NBS for coastal resilience investments, whereas also some projects have invested in beaches and dune investments in seagrass, coral reefs as well. So closely with our colleagues in environment and water, what we try to do at this global team for nature-based solutions for climate resilience is that we try to support our colleagues and our country clients around the world with integrating these type of solutions in investment portfolios. So we try to do this at scale, and we try to develop tools and resources that can be used to scale up the support. So to give you an idea, we support around 40 investment projects per year that finance these type of solutions. If you're interested in learning more about the knowledge products, I would encourage you to go to naturebasedsolutions.org Knowledge Hub, where you can find more of these resources. So back to the catalog, and this is my last slide. So basically, if we look at the coastal space specifically, we still see that there are quite a lot of challenges with the identification of these type of solutions, and we see a number of underlying causes for that. So one is actually it's particularly in low middle income countries, it's not that clear that there is a very comprehensive overview of the available interventions across protection, restoration, and hybrid solutions. So we felt that sometimes it's difficult to start because there's the limited awareness of what can actually be done. Also, there's institutional barriers in the sense that there's an absence of shared operational technical language on these type of NBS for climate resilience that we can use to talk to people in different sectors, right? In natural resource management, and infrastructure, coastal management. Then also there's limited understanding of, especially at the sort of very early identification stage, limited understanding of the costs and benefits and like how to understand, site-specific suitability factors. And this is especially challenging when you try to understand complementarity to gray infrastructure investments. So this all has led us to believe that there is a need for a product like this. And I'll give it back to Niels now to introduce the next speakers who will go with you through the catalog.
Thank you very much, Boris. Our next speaker is Borja González Reguero. He's a senior disaster risk management consultant for the GFDRR, and he will present some of the key insights from this new publication. Borja, over to you.
Thank you, Niels. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So I'll be providing a brief introduction about why a focus on why I focus on coastal areas and the scope of this catalog, right? So the first thing is that we are seeing that coastal zones are among the most at-risk regions globally. They are not only challenged by increasing coastal hazards such as tropical cyclones, extratropical storms, tsunamis, and other impacts, but they are also increasing, concentrating larger number of population, but also critical infrastructure like both public and private infrastructure, and increasing economic activity. And these trends have been happening for over decades as we have been developing coastal zones, particularly in narrow areas that are very low-lying and very close to the sea. Next. As we have been developing these coastal economies in narrow coastal zones that are increasingly exposed to coastal hazards and natural hazards, then we have also been adding additional pressures on natural ecosystems. These natural ecosystems were providing natural buffer function, so they were mitigating risks by attenuating storm surges, waves, flooding, and erosion impacts. The loss of these coastal ecosystems not only gets translated in a loss of coastal protection services, therefore increasing the risk over time, but also we have been losing many ecosystem services that they were providing, not only in terms of biodiversity, but also raw materials, carbon sequestration, tourism opportunities. So traditionally, coastal communities have been increasingly looking for solutions. We engineers have relied on hard engineering solutions, such as levees, breakwaters, groins, etc. They have been effective many times, but other times have also been very difficult to implement and difficult to maintain and keep up. They're also expensive, so they cannot be cost effective for all the communities. And often they have also brought associated environmental trade-offs and impacts. So in this context is where nature-based solutions have been gaining increasing momentum. So nature-based solutions are revolving about the principle that they can leverage natural processes to reduce risks while also providing other co-benefits and multifaceted solutions. One central point here to make is that this is not a solution that fits all the contexts. It's not only the only solution. So we can leverage key strengths of nature-based solutions by also combining them with gray infrastructure, right? So the hybrid combination of green and gray systems working in tandem can reinforce each other and also leverage the strengths of each. And also, it's important to say that they won't be affected in all the contexts, right? So we need to start by looking at the local conditions, the exposure levels, other ecological settings, as well as other factors that play a key role in how they're going to be performing, how cost-effective they could be, and also what kind of local benefits and opportunities they can deliver. So in the past, we have seen, as Boris was introducing, we have seen increasing momentum and interest from different countries where the bank works on nature-based solutions. And we have identified that this has been driven by a demand from countries that were demanding some overall guidance on how to translate nature-based solutions and all the conversation going about the global momentum for nature-based risk reduction into spatial design and implementation. The questions we were receiving was how we start planning, identifying sites, types of projects, and how we can start moving in planning and investing in these kind of projects and risk mitigation options. So this is how we conceptualize the Coastal Catalog for Nature-based Solutions, which is the product that we are producing now, we are presenting today, but it also builds from other guidelines and products that we have developed, that the bank has developed in the past, such as the Urban Catalog for Nature-based Solutions that had a lot of traction and use by many stakeholders. and also is complemented with software, a tool that we call the Nature-based Solution Opportunity Scan, that leverage different Earth observation data and geospatial numerical tools to actually provide, to work with these catalogs, this overall guidance, to actually provide a specific guidance and in terms of the sites of where and how cost-effective nature-based solutions can be. So the catalog is organized as into different typologies or families of nature-based solutions. So we look at both geomorphological as well as ecological and physical and climate drivers. And we pretty much are trying to build from the existing natural ecosystems that we see along the shores that include muddy shores, but also beach and dune systems, the hinterland, coral reefs, shellfish reefs, mangroves, salt marshes, and also submerged vegetation like seagrasses or kelp. So we try to provide what are the main factors and conditions of these ecosystems, how they can work for risk mitigation, for coastal protection services, as well as other co-benefits. And then we try to infer not only conservation, but also restoration and hybrid infrastructure associated to these natural environments. So one important part of the catalog, an initial one, is that we try to provide some overall guidance on how to approach the planning and the conceptualization of these projects. One central topic is that we need to understand the coastal system not as a series of projects of interventions in the coastal zone, but more like an interconnected system where natural processes interact with human activities, and what happens upstream and downstream in the coast are related, right? So this is the concept of integrated coastal management. This is also what we recommended for managing risk and activities and planning and investments in the coastal zones. So one very good example is the reach to reef management approach. Very much is based on the rationale that what happens in the watershed also has an effect downstream in the coastal zones. So before we can start planning solutions for the downstream, for the coastal areas, we also need to understand how that project intervention has connection with the activities that happen in the hinterland and also downstream from it. So the Nature Solution Coastal Catalog leverages this kind of understanding of the coastal system as an interconnected system and tries to provide some guiding principles for clients and stakeholders to start approaching the planning, the overall planning, the initial insight of these projects. So first, some guiding principles to highlight here would be that we need to define with the problem, right? Nature-based solutions can be a solution, but it's a tool for an end. And we need to start by understanding the scope of work and the scope of the problem very clearly. So we need to define the problem, assess what are the benefits that we aim to deliver, and also frame that in the context of development goals. Then we need to assess the site suitability, considering different physical, ecological, and management factors like location and climate, hydrodynamics, what is the geology, what has happened in the past, how we got to this solution, and what is driving the main problem. And then factors like sedimentation rate, the type of vegetation, the historical change in the land and the ecosystem. All those are factors that are very important to leading us to an effective solution. Another guiding principle is that we need to consider NBS in this system-wide perspective. So in the infographic on the left, for example, you can see a levee system in Vietnam where we try to identify also reinforcing mangroves, right, as an alternative way or a complementary measure to actually reduce the risk of the levee system. And this can be translated in reduced maintenance cost or reducing the height, the cost of the levee just by reducing the height or the dimensions of the levee, or just providing an additional layer of security and safety to this investment, right? So we need to look at what happens in the seaward side as well as what happens, in the hinterland, and how these solutions can be working together with others. And another central point is that we want to leverage this kind of nature-based systems and features to actually provide more comprehensive solutions not only in terms of services and delivery of benefits, but also across the entire spectrum of green to gray, right? Because it's true that in many contexts, it won't be possible to develop or enhance existing ecosystems. Many times, we'll be looking at some sort of integration of green and gray as we visualize in this infographic on the right. We also aim to leverage the scalability and adaptive capacity of nature-based solutions. So some of these systems can actually adapt to environmental changes, and this can be an asset for other more hard engineering solutions and infrastructure. We can also leverage the different benefits as was introduced before, like erosion reduction, not only risk mitigation, but also tourism, biodiversity, raw materials, etc. And then just because of the delivery of these services, many times nature solutions are going to be happening in a cross-sectoral context. So there will be many stakeholders probably involved, not only at the local level, but at all levels of administration in delivering and managing these services that these kind of nature-based infrastructure systems can provide. Right, and I'll pass it now to Eduardo to talk about the rest of the catalog and the different information that is captured in the different sections.
Thank you very much, Borja. Yeah, thanks for the explanation. My name is Eduardo Marin from Felix Landscape Architects and Planners. I think we are quite pleased to be part of this event, especially with such a diverse audience. If I can read briefly the people who join us today. I think probably because perhaps we all have different backgrounds and we come from different fields. I would like to believe that we all share the common understanding that nature-based solutions, specifically coastal NBS, they can actually play a key role in adapting our coastal environments and our coastal cities as well into the future and into the climate uncertainties. Today, my part of the presentation, I will be talking from the user perspective, specifically from the implementation side. Many practitioners, as myself, that we are often involved in the implementation, the design, and the construction, often of NBS. Sometimes we are looking for answers, and we hope that this catalog can actually help to address those answers and to gain a little bit of more understanding and position nature-based solutions as a real option in terms of project implementation. So what type of content can we find in the catalog? This slide summarizes precisely that. We can find information about facts, some figures, using the basic description of the NBS, together with some suitability considerations, NBS interventions as well, either they are from the protection point of view or the restoration point of view, or even in combination with gray infrastructure, as we call it, the hybrid interventions, but also contains information on the benefits, the costs, and some examples all over the world. This body of knowledge, somehow, it allowed us to move from system understanding to also assessing whether it's possible or not to implement an NBS in a given location, but also towards potential interventions or actual measures, together with the feasibility from the financial point of view. Next, please. This content that I just explained is consistently described through all the families that Borja already mentioned. This is already like a really interesting and critical starting point, because depending on the context or where you work, the coastal systems are different. So not all the NBS can be implemented in every place. So I think, for instance, today I will be focusing on one of them, just to give you an example of how we can use in the catalog in an area which, for instance, is dominated by a sandy shore, specifically connected to dunes or beaches. So please, if you can go on. So the point of the coming slides is just to give you an idea about how the catalog can help us to in our decision making or our implementation making. The first part of the first step that the catalog provide information on is basically a description and an understanding of what type of system are we talking about through a series of visualizations in which you can already see the size of the interventions, the scale, the different components, the different of functions that in this case sandy shores can provide. It is also complemented with a description about the system, a very basic understanding of the system is about. In this case, for instance, it highlights the importance like working with sandy shores, that it is a dynamic coastal system, which is basically saved by waves, tides, and sedimentation budget. And this is already very important because if you want to work with NBS, you really need to understand from the beginning that you need to work with those dynamic and not against them. So that would be the first step, a basic understanding of the MBS. And then if we move towards the next one, it is about the suitability consideration. It is if actually the place or the context in which you are working and if it actually met the conditions that the development of this nature-based solution require. So through a series of points, like for instance, information on climate, location, on the hydrodynamics that in this case the sandy shore require or need together with sedimentation, transport, the sediment size. The catalog propose a series of not abstract numbers, but actually precise numbers in which specifically in this case, the sandy shore requires for the implementation of potential solutions in this case. Usually, this is a very also important point because most of the times, if your given context and if they don't meet these requirements, probably the implementation of nature-based solutions can be a bit more difficult. So, but if we are lucky and our project zone actually met those requirements, then we can move already in the next part of the catalog, which is about interventions. Interventions, now we are moving a little bit more into the implementation. So the catalog proposes three types of interventions. It highlights the importance of applying protection measures, which they are the ones who are more entailed to protect the system, the coastal system that we are talking on. Like, for instance, implementing pathways to restrict the access or restricts also areas for development. So it's basically all kinds of combinations and measures that they can actually help to preserve the existing system on the project zone. But then sometimes this is not the case, and the catalog also provides what we call it restoration and enhancement measures that have to do those actions that they are interesting or necessary to give a little bit of a push to the system in order to restore them. So, for instance, in the case of the sandy shore, we can find of nourishments, dune restoration, beach scrapping. In the catalog, you can find like a detailed description with all the technical parameters that they are necessary per each of these restoration and enhancement measures. But sometimes, as you probably all know, sometimes with nature might be not enough, specifically because at the moment of implementing nature-based solutions, we need to integrate with cities, and there is always a strong constraint in terms of space. So sometimes we need to also combine nature-based solutions with gray infrastructure. And this is what the next slide, it will help us to understand how we can combine nature-based solutions with gray infrastructure in certain way that both systems can actually work and they can actually cooperate each other. In the catalog, you can find examples like in the case of the sandy shore, like how to implement perched beaches or groins or erosion control structure with the necessarily facts and figures like the width and then the amount of buffer space and all these kind of requirements that at the moment of implementing a project they are really important to know. If we move to the next slide, the catalog also, this is a very key point, it also highlights the benefits like every NBS solution can provide. And in this case, it's not only about flood risk or erosion control, it also gives you input and feedback and understanding on how other benefits are also very important to know in advance to highlight and to position the NBS as an investment which is not only about investing in risk management, but also in other sort of benefits like Borja and Boris already explained. So in this case, it's not just about solving a problem, but also creating the framework or creating the space that nature-based solutions can actually be optimized and also provide with the necessary room to provide all the benefits that they are able to provide with. Then the next step in information of the catalog is also about the cost. It is very important to know the feasibility and the financial feasibility of the nature-based solutions. So the catalog also provides you with some key reference, specifically on capital costs, but also on operational and maintenance costs from different projects, because of course we know that the cost, specifically the capital costs, they are quite different based on the country or on the context. But at least it gives you a little bit of an idea about what are the ranges that we are moving from. So through this type of infographics, to this type of figures, then it can actually help to build a business case to implement nature-based solutions and help to also identify a proper cost-benefit analysis in a very professional way and avoiding somehow very optimistic conversations. And then to conclude, you can also find in the catalog information about places in which there are already initiatives and test case studies going on. In every family, you can find like approximately 4 to 5 test cases all over the world. And in this case, for instance, I would like to highlight the project number 3, which is a project from the World Bank. So I think if you move to the next slide, and I believe my last one, it is a case study of natural growings in Casamanca in Senegal. It's a project from the World Bank. So in the catalog, you can find information about, in this case, the construction of natural growings, that they actually were able to increase the width of the beach in about 40 meters. But also describe the project, also the challenges, the lesson learned, in order to get all this understanding and move it back to future projects and future implementation of NBS all over the world. Because at the end, this summary of projects you can actually learn a lot from the past experience from other communities and other practitioners. So I think as a summary, I would like to say, and again, very thank you for trusting Felix in the elaboration and working together with you, that this is not just a collection of solutions, but as you can see through all these steps and with all these different chapters and amounts of information that the catalog has, is really connected to a framework of implementation and also to help practitioners like myself into the decision makers and also to position NBS as an option, but as a feasible option, and basically to bridge the gap in which is between the knowledge and the implementation of a nature-based solution, in this case the coastal NBS. So thank you very much for the time, and I would move my word to Niels, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, Borja, and Boris, for these presentations that give us a glimpse into the material and what's available. We will now turn to a brief panel discussion. I want first, though, to suggest to all of you connected, we have about 170 people connected. If you do have questions, please post them in the chat or after the quick panel discussion. I hope we still have time for some Q&A, so you can also then raise your hand, virtual hand. I see one question already in the chat. I will direct that straight over to Boris to let me know who I should point at for an answer to this. But we will turn to the panel now. We have four panelists. We have Dixie Mingote-Kwa, who's disaster risk management specialist in our team and works and co-lead the NBS program. We have Gabriela Encalada, senior environment specialist working with PROBLUE and the World Bank. We have Todd Bridges, professor of practice in resilient and sustainable systems, College of Engineering at the University of Georgia. And Todd previously worked as a research scientist for 3 decades with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and founded the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Engineering with Nature program. And we have Alexandros Gasparatos, Professor, Institute for Future Initiatives, University of Tokyo. Alexandros' research currently focuses on the adoption and performance of nature-based solutions for coastal resilience in different Asian contexts, as well as integration in urban infrastructure for disaster risk reduction. I have a few questions, not sure we'll run through all of them. It depends on the activity in the chat, but my first question goes to Dixie. So the catalog is intended as a practical tool for early stage option identification, particularly during project concept and pre-feasibility stages. From your experience with the World Bank financing infrastructure programs, where do you see the greatest value of the catalog in helping teams and our counterparts identify realistic nature-based and hybrid solutions? Dixie.
Thanks, Niels. I hope everyone can hear me. So my name is Dixie. I'm with GFDRR and co-leading the practice for nature-based solutions. So to respond to Niels's questions, from a task team leader perspective, based on past work in Asia Pacific, like Indonesia and Myanmar, we see that the greatest value of the coastal catalog is that it changes the starting point of the conversation, both within bank task teams and with the government counterparts. So concept and pre-FS is really our moment of leverage for using this catalog in an infra project. So in terms of value, I'll respond in mainly 2 points. First is that it expands early on the option space before teams spend a significant amount of time and resources and before decisions geared towards more traditional hard engineered solutions are locked in. So we see that in many coastal projects, task teams and clients have a tendency to default to familiar gray infrastructure because those solutions are easier to define at concept stage. You know your input, you know your output, it's easier to quantify. So what this coastal catalog does is that it helps to surface and then systematically scan both nature-based and hybrid solutions. So you can do it by suitability considerations as shown by Eduardo and across the 9 families that Borja presented before the concepts are locked in. The second point I wanted to make is that it helps task team leaders on the bank side and the client side ask better questions early on. So rather than jumping straight to, can this mangrove replace a seawall, the catalog does have some of NBS tools coupled with NBS tools like the NBS opportunity scan rather. It would encourage more practical exploration of options, and the catalog does show that hybrid solutions exist elsewhere and are defensible. So questions that the catalog prompts to ask are like, what can be created or restored versus protected to meet our benefits? To what extent do we need engineering protection? And what does green-gray integration make sense using actual examples that are presented in the catalog?
Thanks, Dixie. Gabriela, looking across the PROBLUE portfolio, how prominent are coastal nature-based solution approaches in practice, and how are they most effectively feeding into World Bank financed projects? And any suggestions on how the catalog can support this effort?
Thank you, Niels, and good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Gabriela Encalada, and I work for the PROBLUE Trust Fund at the World Bank, and it's a real pleasure for me to be part of this panel, particularly as we come together to discuss such an important and timely topic. And before diving into this long question, let me briefly introduce you PROBLUE for those who may not be familiar with it, and as it provides a useful context maybe for my remark and my response. So PROBLUE is a World Bank administered multi-donor trust fund that supports sustainable and integrated development of marine and coastal resources. And its goal is to help countries protect and manage ocean and coastal ecosystems in ways that promotes economic growth, create jobs, and ensure environmental sustainability. In doing so, it helps also to lay the foundations for a sustainable and inclusive blue economy, working across 4 key pillars. One is sustainable fisheries and agriculture, marine pollution, development of sustainable ocean sectors, and also integrated seascapes management. So a central part of this work, particularly in the context of the nature-based solutions, is strengthening what we call the readiness. This means supporting countries in assessing whether the right enabling conditions are in place to design and implement effective solutions, also including strong governance frameworks, adequate technical capacity, and clear strategic priorities. So now turning into the question, coastal nature-based solutions have rapidly emerged as one of the most dynamic and fast-growing areas in the PROBLUE portfolio. So the catalog we're launching today is therefore very timely, and it helps consolidate and accelerate the shift that is already well underway across our operations and bank. And to situate this clearly, the coastal nature-based solutions sits squarely within the PROBLUE's 4th pillar, which is on seascapes management, which supports the integrated planning and management of coastal and marine ecosystems. And in practice, however, they go well beyond a single pillar or instruments. We see them embedded across a wide range of PROBLUE engagements, from mangrove restoration and coastal habitat conservation to the integration of nature-based approaches in marine spatial planning, to blue carbon initiatives, and to analytical work that helps also the governments to better value and manage their coastal natural capital. So what is particularly striking is the strong and growing demand from client countries right now. So governments are increasingly recognizing that healthy coastal ecosystems are not just optional or ancillary, they are critical infrastructure. They function as natural coastal defenses, reducing vulnerability to storms and erosion, while also delivering some of the highest value assets we have for biodiversity, climate mitigation through blue carbon, and also livelihoods and resilience of coastal communities. The coastal nature-based solutions are no longer just a niche or emerging topic within the PROBLUE. They are becoming a central operational entry point for how we support countries to deliver on both development and climate objectives in coastal areas. So, for example, through country engagements, regional programs, and global analytics, PROBLUE is building the evidence tools, policy frameworks needed to mainstream the NBS in coastal development. So this includes supports to scaling nature-based solutions finance in Sri Lanka, for example, integrating coastal resilience into Fiji sustainable tourism framework, informing spatial planning through NBS opportunity scan in Belize, and linking this NBS to territorial planning into Lake Victoria region of Kenya. And at the global level, the PROBLUE is also strengthening decision support tools, including the blue carbon co-benefits module within the NBS opportunity scanner. And now turning into how the coastal nature-based solutions are feeding into the World Bank lending operation and how the catalog can further support these efforts. So the World Bank has significantly scaled up its investments in nature-based solutions over the past decade. To date, more than 200 projects have integrated NBS for climate resilience, representing over 10 billion in commitments. And within this, more than 40 operations directly support the protection or restoration of coastal ecosystems. PROBLUE roles is in this space fundamentally analytical and catalytic. It plays a critical upstream function in developing also the tools, the diagnostics, technical assistance that help de-risk structure, and ultimately shape World Bank operations across regions. And in other words, PROBLUE helps create the foundations that inform how investments are designed and implemented. And for example, analytical work supported by PROBLUE has informed operations such as the tourism diversification and resilience in Gambia, the Fiji Tourism Development Program in Vanuatu, and Pacific Resilience Program, among others. And the leverage is really significant. Since its inception in 2019, every dollar invested in PROBLUE has helped catalyze approximately $66 in the World Bank financing across nearly 100 operations. And coastal nature-based solutions are increasingly a growing share of this pipeline. A particularly important instrument in this space was already mentioned by Boris and the team, is the Nature-Based Solutions Opportunity Scan. And this is a standardized geospatial methodology developed to support task teams in identifying and prioritizing NBS investments in cities and coastal areas. And it uses spatial analytics to pinpoint what nature-based solutions can deliver the highest risk reduction, ecosystem, and development returns. To date, the methodology has been applied across more than 5,000 kilometers of coastal line and in 17 countries. And importantly, its application in coastal landscapes has been supported by the PROBLUE and GFDRR Global Program on Nature-Based Solutions. And in Vietnam, for instance, the Coastal Nature-Based Opportunity Scan is informing investments in mangrove restoration and coastal embankment design in the Red River Delta. In St. Lucia, it directly shaped the Urban Resilient and Flood Management Project, including $20 million in combined gray and green infrastructure investments. And beyond individual projects, the scan is also influencing strategic planning, and it has informed country climate and development reports in countries such as Belize, Dominica, Fiji, Grenada, Sri Lanka, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. And so this engagement is helping governments to elevate the nature-based solutions within national climate and developing countries. And this brings me to the catalog itself. And so the catalog responds to a very clear operational demand from task teams and client countries. The need for more structured, accessible, and practice-oriented guidance on what works, where it works, and also under what conditions. And it directly complements the opportunity scan that I just mentioned. And if the scan helps answer where to invest, the catalog helps to answer what to invest in and how to design it well. And so it does by organizing the coastal nature-based solutions into these 9 solution families that were well explained by Borja, and providing this practical operational guidance on sustainability, design considerations, and also indicative cost expected benefits and real-world case studies. And what this provides to the World Bank team and government counterparts is a shared language and practical toolkit, one that supports more consistent, higher quality integration of nature-based solutions into coastal resilience and in climate investments. And to close, the trajectory is very clear. More coastal nature-based solutions are moving from a standalone or pilot intervention towards systematic integration into the World Bank operations. And this shift is being enabled by stronger analytics, clear operational tools, and also growing demand from countries, and with PROBLUE serving as a key ocean accelerator and leader in the supporting this transition. But ultimately, the success depends on integration and across sectors and across teams and across partners. Coastal resilience is not only an environmental agenda, it's also an infrastructure, development, and fiscal resilience agenda. And getting it right requires environment, urban, water, and disaster risk management teams working from a common foundation. So the catalog is of the key instruments helping now to build that shared foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. I'll jump to Todd in a second, but I want to answer one of the questions in the chat from Simon, who's asking, in the World Bank context, who's bringing this project forward, the World Bank or the partner nation city? I think I cover that relatively quickly. Everything we finance at the World Bank is proposed to us by a government. So that means that it is a government. It can be a city with the general support of the formal World Bank counterpart, which is most often someone at a high level in Ministry of Finance. So all projects we finance need to be presented to us and owned by a government. That is not as easy as it sounds. There is a lot of technical assistance that goes into helping governments present and prepare projects to us. That is often where some of the work and the knowledge that we are sharing today fits in on our side. Often a country comes to, or sometimes a country comes to us with a problem they would like to solve rather than a project they would like to finance. And to go from problem to project, many countries benefit from technical advice, and sometimes our institution can offer that technical advice. So in a nutshell, that's how that equation functions. I'll jump straight back to our online panel. Todd, you played a central role in advancing engineering with nature within the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, particularly in the years following Hurricane Katrina, when coastal risk management began shifting towards system scale and hybrid solutions. Drawing on those experiences and on your current work at the University of Georgia, what are the most important lessons in terms of engineering and project design directly relevant for countries using this catalog today?
Thank you, Niels. I propose three lessons in brief. I'd say the first lesson is the importance of learning the art of and A-N-D. 20th century engineering emphasized single line of defense approaches, and to a great degree, I think, minimized the importance of landscape or natural features in favor of human engineering. The art of and is a big step beyond either or thinking, either all nature-based or all conventional infrastructure. The systems, I think, that will endure will include combinations of nature-based and conventional infrastructure. This is an engineering challenge, also conceptually and in practice. It requires a more interdisciplinary and integrative approach that affects how you build teams, the tools you use, the nature of your analysis, and on and on. And these multi-layered systems that include nature-based components and conventional infrastructure components are not built all at once, but are assembled in phases over decades of time. And that requires a lot of forethought and advanced planning and action, and that presents a number of institutional challenges. The catalog addresses these needs directly, but it is much easier said than done, I would say. And I hope that the readers of the catalog will give the institutional ramifications of its messages some very careful thought, because it's going to be a long journey. The second lesson is the importance of multifunctional or multi-purpose systems. Again, 20th century engineering was single line, and as a consequence, also single purpose infrastructure. For example, a levee or a dike has a single purpose, keeping water out or in, depending on whether you're thinking about coasts or rivers. One of the strengths of natural infrastructure is that it is inherently multi-purpose. In other words, it produces multiple benefits: protection benefits, ecological benefits, social benefits, etc. And this is important and a very valuable aspect of nature-based solutions, but it also presents challenges to engineering, particularly the process of designing for multiple benefits, evaluating trade-offs among those benefits, and evaluating and managing the production of those benefits over time. And the third lesson is the importance of supporting processes. We can engineer and build a network of wetlands to produce engineering benefits. Now, how well that nature-based solution performs will depend on whether the processes necessary to support that wetland over time are operating and will operate in the future, like local and regional sediment supply and transport. Those processes are critical and necessary to nourish that wetland and to sustain it. And this will certainly present both an engineering and institutional challenge to countries all around the world. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Todd. I want to follow up with you because you mentioned the long journey, I think, and you made a few references to institutional implications. And there was a question earlier in the chat from Eduardo, whom I think is asking about the ownership of communities around probably what would be the implementation and the sustaining or the maintaining, if you will, of the natural part of the infrastructure. Since you've been involved in this for quite a while, maybe you've had a chance to look at the medium term, the implementation. Do you have any insights on that ownership? How it does it work? Does is it maintained?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Niels, because single line, single purpose infrastructure also has simple ownership, generally speaking. One agency or one entity. These kinds of systems that we're talking about now, which are really key to the future, are not going to be single ownership projects. They are going to involve partners. It's a partnership ownership model that we need to pursue, and that will be critical to maintaining these systems over time. And partnership sounds nice and attractive, but it is also exceedingly complicated to pull off over time. So I think it also presents an institutional challenge that we need to find our way through. I believe progress is being made in that regard, but it needs a lot more attention. Financing, we can see, for example, partnerships and financing is just the beginning of that. Partnership and maintaining and operating these systems is a step beyond that as well.
Very well. Thanks, Todd. Maybe Boris, do you want to make a quick plug for our technical assistance guidance related to the M&E related question?
Absolutely. Thanks, Niels. No, that's I think it's a very good question, and it's also one question that we get a lot from our World Bank colleagues who are working in country, but also our government clients is, okay, how do we actually track the impact of these solutions over time, and especially for a project financing organization like the World Bank. This is a critical question because the way we are set up is that we, of course, often in our results frameworks for projects, we often look at maybe a 5, 7, 8, 9-year timeline, and that's sort of when we do our main completion reporting. And of course, for NBS, that's not really long enough, right? We need to look at a longer time scale. So I just wanted to do a quick shout out to everyone connected here. It's like one thing we've been working on over the past years is also to come up with an M&E guidance for nature-based solutions projects that will be launched in about, well, I would say always careful with timelines, but I would say maybe 3-4 months from now. So yeah, just stay tuned for that, and hopefully that can also partly answer the question on monitoring and evaluating the functioning of these solutions over time. Back to you, Niels.
Thanks, Boris. All right, back to our panel and Alexandros. Contribution of the catalog is that it distinguishes between coastal nature-based solutions with different life cycle cost profiles, including solutions that are more capital intensive upfront and others that depend more heavily on long-term operation and maintenance. From your experience working on the costing and economic analysis of coastal NBS, how well are these CapEx, OpEx proportions typically reflected in appraisal and decision making?
Thank you very much. Hello from Japan, greetings from Japan. Thank you very much for the invitation and congratulations for this excellent material. I will be answering as a researcher. I will be answering a little bit how this catalog can contribute to somebody like me that is coming a little bit from the research side. When we are looking at the economic analysis of nature-based solutions, they are coming usually from two directions. They are coming either from the feasibility/performance/impact/benefit of a coastal defense on nature-based solution, or they can come from the public acceptance of nature-based solutions, for example, through preference stated tools like choice experiments. Okay. The report, the catalog, is built to do the first. So it is giving very good information about the benefits that nature-based solutions can provide. We know about the multifunctional benefits, but what it is offering very well, it is this concept of multidimensional costs. Me as an academic, it's very difficult to sit down and find this cost. It takes me very much time to do a literature review. I assume for everybody that is doing this technical assessment, it takes a lot of time to sit down and identify these costs. What this report has done very well is to systematize this cost, to find the ratios between capital and operational expenditures, but also put them into perspective of other expenditures. For example, opportunity costs or how it's called, different other types of cost. So when I was reading the report, I thought, okay, it is helping me a lot to sit down and do a cost-benefit analysis. But what I found particularly interesting is that it can have a lot of functionality, a lot of this information that is inside this report to inform studies that are trying to understand the willingness to pay, the social willingness to pay for these projects, the social acceptability through choice experiments. They can help standardize the design of attributes, the levels of attributes, which all of these for, let's say, a researcher like me or a practitioner somewhere else on the world, it takes quite a lot of time to identify through literature review or scan of technical documents. So this is not to be underestimated. So what I want to make clear is that, of course, this kind of catalog can help the design and cost-benefit analysis and feasibility and performance assessments of these projects, but can inform very well studies that are trying to understand the social acceptability and the willingness to pay. Because we can have whatever kind of nature-based solution or coastal defense, but if there's social opposition, does not meet social needs, the chances of happening or fulfilling its full potential, especially if we are talking about multiple co-benefits, might be limited. So this is what I found particularly valuable there. And this clear exposition of capital expenditure and operational expenditure, I found it very, very useful, both for a researcher like me, but also as a communication tool for designers, uh, practitioners, decision makers, but possibly also local communities that are going to be getting a good understanding of, okay, this project is going to have these benefits. Okay, we understand it, but this is the bottom line. This is how much it's going to cost, how much in advance, how much later on. So I hope I answered your question. I came a little bit from a different perspective, but this is what I found particularly interesting, especially in relation to the costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandros. There is a somewhat related question in the chat from Rizal asking whether or not there is a cost-benefit analysis or a cost-benefit ratio for each intervention provided in the catalog, and is whether the duration calculation for the entire lifespan of the intervention a specific time period. So I guess Boris can maybe answer specifically on the catalog. Boris, maybe we can post the link to the separate cost benefit publication. So any of you connected who's interested in the cost benefit and some guidance on how to go about creating cost benefit calculations. We do have a separate document for that as well. But as you just heard Alessandro say, these are not trivial, and this does certainly also relate to another question in the chat about the value creation and the potential for crowding in private capital. And I see a great answer already in the chat from Valerie on this. But just want to make a point to say that while we increasing our understanding of calculating the value of nature, and you heard several presenters and panelists talk about the value that can be manifold, that's not the same as a revenue stream. And without a revenue stream, it it's complicated to bring private capital into the equation. So it's not all nature-based solution that lends itself for private capital mobilization, certainly. But Boris, do you want to briefly mention that other document?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I can also quickly respond to the question, because I think it's when we were working on this report, and I think it's also what Alexandros, how he described it, like it's quite challenging to give a meaningful sort of metric at the NBS family level, because it's so context specific, these type of costs and benefits that we find, right? Especially if you just look at the global level. So what we found useful in the report here is to provide these graphics with the sort of the to basically give an idea of, like, is this solution OPEX heavy or is it a CAPEX heavy solution? So, and that gives you an idea of, like, okay, how do I need to finance this, right? So do I need a lot of money in the beginning, and then as a government you're good for the next 20 or 30 years, or do you have the capacity to finance something that, you know, maybe requires 30% right now, but the next 10% is more spread out over the next 10 years, right, or over the next 20 years. So I think this is quite an important aspect to think about when you conceptualize a potential project and to integrate this into your coastal management strategy. So this is what we thought. Okay, we felt comfortable. Okay, this is, looking at the global literature, this is what we probably can do at a global level in terms of costs. But we cannot really be very specific in cost-benefit ratios, because this, of course, depends very much on the location. So as you can imagine, if you want to look at coastal protection by a mangrove area, for example, if there's no one living behind that mangrove area, the value will be very low. And also, when you think about restoration cost, if the area is not accessible, if the if the materials are very expensive locally that you would need to do some of these things, if labor costs are very high, this will be very, very much determining the cost and the benefit profile of the solution. So what we landed on was basically, in this case, for the catalog, as it's a global product, to say, okay, these are the most important, let's say 3, 4, 5 benefits you should consider for this family. And these are the important considerations when to think about in terms of cost. So land opportunity cost, because it requires a lot of space, but also, whether it's more on the CapEx side or whether it's more on the OpEx side. So this was a bit the thinking behind it. Now, going to the guidance that you mentioned, Niels, that is in the chat. This guidance is a report we published a couple of years ago, which is specifically about how to deal with cost-benefit analysis across the project cycle. So also later on, when you're doing feasibility studies, etc. So it gives a more, step-by-step guidance of the methods you can use to quantify cost and benefits at different stages in a project. So if you're interested in that, I would, strongly encourage looking at that resource. Thanks, Niels. Back to you.
Thanks, Boris. I'm looking at the chat, trying to see if we can pick up most of the questions. There's one from Karen that I think I want to see if I can direct to Todd, because I know, Todd, that you led a very comprehensive technical piece of work, 800 pages, if I'm not mistaken, some years ago when you were with the Army Corps of Engineers, and I'm wondering, you probably came across this type of question and have some insights to share with us related to how to reduce unintended risk related to some of this type of interventions. I think that's the nature of the question. Todd, do you want to try to take that on?
Unintended risks are a significant challenge for all interventions. And I think one of the challenges that we are seeing in this regard, Niels, is the complex regulatory environment that surrounds nature-based solutions. Most environmental regulations that we have in the United States, in Europe, and I think around the world have been focused around preventing impacts on the environment associated with what I would consider to be more conventional development in engineering. So how do you exercise those regulatory frameworks and processes for solutions that are also providing what I would call ecological uplift? That's not clear. It's causing significant delays and challenges for actually implementing nature-based solutions at scale. That's our experience in the United States, and I think it's going to be experiencing the experience elsewhere. And a lot of it revolves around the question that you're asking, Niels. These other kinds of effects that are happening, or other kinds of impacts, trade-offs of this species for that species. I think that's kind of at the heart of this question, and it's a particularly difficult one, particularly if you're using these legacy, in the case of the United States, 50-year-old regulatory frameworks that never contemplated the use of anything like a nature-based solution. And some data are suggesting that up to a third of the budget of restoration projects that would include nature-based solutions, up to a third of the budget of those projects is going into the regulatory and permitting process, not in constructing anything, but into the process of deliberating about whether to and how to implement the project. So it's a significant challenge that is going to unfold for years to come.
Thanks a lot, Todd. There was a question on conflicting uses of land and whether or not the guidance offers any insights to that. I guess, Boris, you can address whether or not we have anything in the publication on that. I'm not quite sure. Anyone else in our panel is willing to take that on? But Boris, first to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's a good question. And if you want, I can also say something about the private sector question.
Sure.
I don't know if Borja is still here. I also thought maybe Borja wants to come in on that. No, so just first on the conflicting use of land. So yeah, again, right, this is of course very context specific. So what we try to do for the catalog is to identify per NBS family. So for example, are we talking about hinterland? So right, so like how is the sort of the back shore, like the area, the near shore area, how is this managed? Or are we talking more about mud flats, or are we talking about coral reefs, etc.? So how important is thinking about the opportunity cost of land for each of those solutions, right? So you can imagine that if you have like a coastal forest and it's an area with a lot of development pressure, of course there's going to be a lot of opportunity cost for preserving that forest, but at the same time there are probably going to be a lot of benefits also for preserving that forest, for the many benefits it provides for the people that live nearby, right? So these are the trade-offs that we try to elevate in the report, that we say, okay, yes, you have a lot of benefits on the one hand side. So you can have coastal protection, you can also have tourism benefits, you can also have other livelihood benefits. Maybe there are things growing in those trees that people can harvest, but at the same time you have high opportunity cost for preserving that forest, because there's always going to be someone who wants to develop a nice hotel there, or or build some apartments with ocean view. So this is sort of the level where we feel comfortable going there, right? So that you can say, okay, this solution is likely going to require some space in an area that has pressure, but at the same time it can deliver you these 4 or 5 key benefits. So think about that when you identify the solution, and when you think about sort of the feasibility of investing in this. So that's the level of detail that we have. So the other question, maybe I saw there were a couple of questions about private sector engagement in the chat. And maybe what I can say is something, general statement, I think. So what's important with this is that, of course, if you want to involve the private sector, that you can clearly quantify those benefits that have a private good dimension or a potential private good dimension. So, for example, if you have potential for developing nature-based tourism, you need to present those benefits in a credible way linked to that solution. So, whoever you're working with, either the government or directly working with the private sector, sees those benefits as relevant and believes that this is a good that's worth investing in for them. So how would that link to this catalog? So we, with these benefits charts that Edu presented, we try to show for each solution, okay, these are your key benefits, and some of them may have a private good angle, a private sector angle. And what you can then do as a next step, for example, is work with us on the Coastal MBS opportunity scan that Borja also mentioned. And in this, we can do a geospatial analysis of these different benefits, which can then in turn, and it has a spatially explicit cost benefit analysis as well, which then can, be used to start the conversation with the private sector. A starting point is to do a solid quantification of those benefits that have a private sector angle. And this could be, markets like existing markets like tourism, or just resources like wood or food or etc. But of course, it can also be more like markets that have been created to create a business model for public goods, such as carbon markets or biodiversity credits, etc. So yeah, let me stop there. But this is also, if you're interested in this, have a look at the resources that are out there about the Coastal MBS opportunity scan, and which will have some more examples about the quantifying the important co-benefit.
All right, very good. We are 4 minutes from closing. I will in a second turn to Valerie. We will share all the resources we have available. I do think that at least in written form, they answer many of the questions that some of you have asked. We have, there's one question from Chitan in the chat. I'm guessing our team have many other answers, but the only example I'm aware of that gets somewhat close to this was supported and documented by the Nature Conservancy related to, I think, coral reefs in Yucatan, where they certainly intended to link it to insurance type products. So if you're not aware of that one, take a look at that, but maybe others in our team can follow up with you afterwards. But I now want to turn to Valerie Hickey, who is World Bank Director for Environment, to offer us closing remarks. Valerie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Niels. And I have to admit, I've been having lots of fun listening to this conversation, and just listening and recognizing how far the World Bank Group and the larger community have come in this discussion of nature-based solutions. In fact, I looked back and I realized that in 2012, I think it was, I wrote a blog about nature-based solutions as infrastructure. At the time, of course, we were calling it ecosystem-based adaptation. So everything from the terminology to how we think about it has changed. And that's why I'm so excited about this catalog and so grateful for the partnership, Niels, with you and your team, but also, of course, with all of the support from the government of Japan, who have been so consistent around thinking through how to respond, particularly to disasters, whether they're slow moving or fast, and being technology agnostic, whether it's hard infrastructure or natural infrastructure. And I think that's what's so fabulous about this catalog, because it keeps us moving in the direction. For an awful long time at the World Bank Group, we spent a lot of time trying to argue for why nature-based solutions mattered. And we know why they do. I mean, everybody around this table does. That's why we're here. We know that long-term they can reduce cost. They can increase revenues compared to hard infrastructure. They don't depreciate over time. In fact, they increase their value over time. Think about mangroves and fisheries nurseries. We know all of this. We know they can help improve business continuity. We know the why. We've gotten very good at understanding the why. Because of great work done on the NBS opportunity scan, we're also getting better at knowing the where. And this is really important. And this is super helpful. And I think it's really in a world of scarce resources, not just scarce public resources, but scarce private resources who are looking not to waste money. Understanding where to apply nature-based solutions as a technology actually matters. But what we haven't always known, and we still don't fully, is what the catalogue is beginning to get at, which is what to do and how to do it, with a specific focus on breaking down nature-based solutions into these 9 types of infrastructure, these 9 types of technology. And these are foundational. So much of what we talk about at the World Bank Group today is about building our bottom line, which is all about getting people out of poverty, through a combination of attracting, whether it's public or private investment, that's unlocked by enabling regulations and foundational infrastructure. And what this catalog begins to do is disaggregate the types of foundational natural infrastructure and nature-based solutions that are so key to doing this. And what I like about what the catalog does is it continues this conversation we've been having, and it answers some of the questions that I myself posed in 2014 when I wrote that blog, which is, first of all, is this a Trojan horse to simply do conservation? It's clearly not. The focus has shifted from what NBS used to be, which is about let's protect the mangroves because we have a sense that they're important, to really figuring out, if we think about mangroves as an infrastructure asset, how do you actually engineer them? And what are the costs and benefits of doing it in a very serious, mature way? And that just speaks to how in the last 10, 15 years, the conversation have changed. But it's not just about thinking about how do you move from sort of a loosey-goosey aid model to a serious engineering and investment model, but it's also about showing that we've become much more pragmatic over time. And it's about recognizing, and the model does this, what works where, which of the technologies, under what conditions, and where are the risks. I saw this in some of the meeting chat, that you're right, nature-based solutions, like any kind of infrastructure investment, are not perfect. They do not fit every risk in every way, and it's about being pragmatic. It's about figuring out the best, most affordable and available technology to fit the risk. And that's why the third thing that this catalog really underpins is the importance of partnership. And the importance not just of all of us working together, who's in this community of folks thinking about NDS, not just from the technology perspective, from the engineering perspective, from the investment perspective, but also how to blend hybrid approaches. What does it look like to have a mix of seawall and mangrove? What does it look like to think about gray and green infrastructure? It's taking this pragmatic approach and really thinking about partnership in a serious way. And that's why this catalog, I think, is just the best type of next installment in our journey working on nature-based solutions. And it's one where the journey has been quite modular. What we need to figure out next is uptake, because this catalog is a living document in many ways. We need, as more of these technologies, these 9 technologies are implemented in the field, are bought, are invested in, are scaled, we're going to learn lessons. We're going to understand better things like unit price, unit cost, what works where. And that's going to help us continue to update this catalog and continue to understand this technology, so that this, at the end of the day, provides clients, whether they're family farmers trying to understand how to best protect their rice paddy from saltine intrusion, whether it's a company, a big hotel who's trying to figure out how to avoid losing part of its infrastructure, whether it's the city of Bangkok, where I was a couple of days ago, who's trying to figure out how to save part of its city from going underwater. We're going to help them figure out, all of us together, how to use nature as a solution that's well priced, is available, and has a lot of other good upsides as well. So a huge thank you, Niels, and thank you to everybody for a fascinating conversation. Congratulations to the team for the catalog.
Thank you so much, Valerie, and thanks for the partnership, of course, with all the brain trust and experience from the Environment Group. this evidently is a subject matter that spans knowledge across so many different professions, which of course is part of the challenge of making it work. That we appreciate and look forward to continue to work closely with you all. There's only left for me to say thanks a lot to all of you. Thanks for the participants. We had close to 200 at some point during the conversation. We hope you will connect to other of our events. Thanks a lot, of course, to the speakers, to the discussants. And with that, have a wonderful rest of the day, how many hours might be left where you are. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.